For the longest time, if you asked, where's the financial capital of the world, you'd really only get two answers, right? New York or London. But that's changing, and it's changing fast. The entire financial map is being redrawn, and today we're going to dive into where these new centers of power are popping up.
So let's just get right to it. Is the era of New York and London actually over? I mean, think about it. Even 20, 30 years ago, that question would have sounded completely ridiculous. But now? It's not just some random thought experiment. This is a real, serious conversation happening in boardrooms all over the world.
And make no mistake, we're not talking about a small adjustment here. This is a seismic shift. The old guard, the established order, it's being challenged. And not just challenged, but challenged by some seriously ambitious and frankly very smart new players who want a big slice of that financial pie. The ground is literally shifting beneath our feet.
Okay, so to really get how massive this change is, we've got to take a step back. Let's talk about the old guard first. Why were New York and London the top dogs, the unchallenged pillars of finance for so long? All right, so you've got these two heavyweights. In one corner, you've got New York. Its power just exploded after World War II thanks to America's economic boom. Suddenly, the NYSE and the NASDAQ weren't just American stock exchanges, they were the platforms for global business. And in the other corner, London. I mean, centuries of history, an incredible pool of talent, and its secret weapon, the time zone. It was this perfect bridge between the US and Asian markets, which made it the absolute king of foreign exchange and global banking.
And that's the key word right there, undisputed. This wasn't just, someone's opinion. It was a cold, hard economic fact. For decades, these two cities were so dominant, so baked into the global system, that the idea of a real challenger, it wasn't even on the radar. It just didn't exist.
Well, that undisputed era is officially over. A whole new chapter is being written as we speak, and it's got some incredibly determined new characters. So, who are these contenders stepping into the ring?
The big challengers are really coming out of the East. We're talking about Dubai and Abu Dhabi in the UAE, and of course the powerhouse that is Singapore. And listen, these cities didn't just stumble into this. This wasn't luck. Their rise is the direct result of a calculated, decades-long game plan to pull money, talent, and influence away from the old hubs.
So the big question is, how did they actually pull it off? Because, let's be real, it's one thing to say, hey, we want to be a financial hub. It's a whole other thing to actually build one from the ground up. Well, turns out they followed a very specific playbook, and wow, has it been effective.
And their playbook is really a masterclass in how to attract capital. Let's look at the UAE. They come out swinging with the ultimate hook, a zero-tax environment. But here's the brilliant part. They paired that with something just as important, a legal framework that big money can trust. They created these special zones, the DIFC and ADGM, that basically operate under English common law. So for a big Western firm, it feels familiar, it feels safe. Singapore played a slightly different card. Their biggest selling point? Rock-solid political stability. In a part of the world that can be a bit turbulent, Singapore is like a safe harbor for your wealth.
So when you boil it all down, the playbook is pretty simple, but man, is it powerful. Step 1, make it super easy to do business in your city. Cut the red tape. Step 2, offer some seriously compelling financial perks, like, zero taxes. And step 3, and this is probably the most important one, build a stable, predictable legal system that a global investor can look at and say, yeah, I can trust them with my money.
Okay, so you've got the old guard and the new challengers. What does all this competition actually lead to? What's the end game? Well, it's not as simple as one city just taking over from another. The result is way more interesting. It's a completely new blueprint for the entire global financial system. Here's the bottom line. The future of finance is multipolar. That's the key takeaway. We are moving away from a world that revolves around just one or two cities. Instead, we're walking into an era where you have multiple, powerful hubs, and each one has its own vibe, its own specialty, its own sphere of influence. And there are three huge forces pushing this change forward. First up, geopolitics. Simple as this. New economic powers are on the rise, and they want their own financial centers, right? They don't want to play by someone else's rules. Second, technology. Fintech and DeFi mean that finance isn't tied to a physical building on Wall Street anymore. It can happen anywhere. And third, there's this fancy term, regulatory arbitrage. But all it really means is that as places like New York and London get stricter with their rules, companies are just packing up and moving to places that are more business-friendly.
And all of this brings us back to that key idea for understanding what's happening, a multipolar world. You usually hear that term when people are talking about global politics, but honestly, it's the perfect description for where finance is going. It's a system where power isn't all jammed into one or two spots. Instead, it's spread out across multiple competing centers.
So that leaves us with a really fascinating question to chew on. For the last century, we've known what a world with one, maybe two Wall Streets looks like. But what about a world with four of them? Or five? How does money flow in a world like that? How does risk get managed? That, right there, is the billion-dollar or maybe trillion-dollar puzzle that everyone in finance is racing to figure out right now.